guys, it's your boy Luke, here for our DFS fades and sleepers, this time for the Scottish Open. We'll be touching on the three most overhyped and overlooked plays of the week, my fades and sleepers that I think are going to help you with your GPP lineups. Of course, the fades, guys I think you should be trying to avoid in your contest that I expect to be a little bit overowned, and as a result, are going to be players that I'm avoiding. And on the flip side, our sleeper picks, the diamonds in the rough that are being overlooked by the masses that I think have a lot more potential than people are giving them credit for. So in these large field contests, we're looking to beat 50 to 100,000 other entries. They give us a great opportunity to get leverage. So that's the goal here, guys. Of course, a little bit more of a reaction to the ownership than anything here. Let's go ahead and hop right on in. Alrighty, I've got my projections on the screen, and as per usual, going to start with our fades. So at the top of the fades board, going to first start with Matt Fitzpatrick, who's priced here at $10,100. I think we can start our argument right there. He's clearly overpriced, and I know he's coming in off the major championship win, but in terms of long-term pedigree, this is somebody who's probably closer to a $9,000 golfer than somebody who should be in the $10,000 range, priced among guys like Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, Xander Schauffele. You know, give him credit for winning that major championship, but it's not like he's a world beater all of a sudden. In fact, that was his first win ever here on the American side of things. Now, you might argue that the link style setup does play well into his skill set, as evidenced by a second place finish at this venue, but at that price tag, you might expect him to be a little bit overlooked. And to this point of the week, that has not been the case. He's in the top 7 of ownership on the slate. Obviously over here, it's blacked out because that's part of my Patreon now, but rest assured, he's well above 16% projected owned, and somebody that if you're going to get leverage to, you're probably going to have to take in at least 30, maybe even 35% of your lineups. So as a result, I'm expecting a little bit of a setback here, not just from the price tag perspective, but also from the mental fatigue perspective. Obviously, winning a major championship, winning for the first time ever on any tour, is going to take a lot out of a player, and that was especially evident at the JP McManus Pro-Am. He did not look his best out there, and I know it was just an exhibition match for charity, but he clearly looked a little bit fatigued, and even in his interviews on the course, didn't look like his sharpest self. So for me, I'm going to be taking a fade stance here, especially considering the strength of field and some of the options around him that I just absolutely love this week. Next up, we've got Xander Schauffele, who is the highest owned player on all of the slate this week. I kind of expected that early, mentioned that he might even be close to 30% owned, which might even be the case for some of these large, let's say large dollar contests, or some of the smaller field single entry GPPs. But in general, I worry about a lot more than just his ownership, which of course you could probably just end the argument right there. But on top of that, Xander Schauffele doesn't tend to like himself these like open championship setups. You know, it's a lot more about US golf courses, something like a US Open. You obviously saw him win at the Travelers Championship, which, you know, a TPC golf course, that's the definition, the epitome of an American golf course. Whereas this week, it's very much so the opposite end of that spectrum, where it's not about target golf, it's classical. It's like a St. Andrews type of golf course. And while this golf course isn't a true link style golf course, I would much rather take Xander Schauffele at a straightforward golf course where it's all about target golf, like what we saw at the Travelers, where the greens were extremely receptive. He was able to throw darts in there all day and really wasn't under any type of stress. So for me, I'm going to be avoiding him here. You know, he's $9,900. I think this is important to harp on too. If he was $10,000 exactly, which he could have been, right? There's no one at $10,000. You would probably see at least 5, maybe even 7% ownership lower on somebody like a Xander Schauffele. But because he's $9,900, people talk themselves into thinking that he's cheaper than he is there. And as a result, a lot more people get to them. And a lot of people are going to start maybe with somebody like a Justin Thomas or a Jon Rahm, who we'll talk about here in a second, and then take somebody like Xander Schauffele as a second man in. I think that's going to be a really common build there. Doing that pretty much ensures that you're bypassing this 9 and top of the 8K range, which if you've seen my core picks video, you know that I absolutely love peppering that range there. So Xander Schauffele comes with opportunity cost. Obviously, you probably have to start your lineup with him to be able to take those type of players with him. And given that you have top 5 players in the world priced around him up there, I just don't think he's worth putting in the 25 or, you know, some of these larger contests. I think he's going to be right around like 30% owned this week. So going to be a fade for me. Taking a stance against Xander Schauffele just seems like chalk that is waiting to bust. And now lastly, this is actually a fade that I hate to have to make because I like Ryan Fox. I bet him outright this week actually, but at $8,500. he's really chalky. Now, I thought he was going to be overlooked. He was going to be a little bit of a sneaky play. I've gotten asked at least 20 questions about Ryan Fox this week. I've seen at least 5 people on Twitter bet him outright that I've never seen bet DP World players outright. Like, it's clear that they don't watch the DP World Tour. Even the American golf fans are like all in on Ryan Fox this week, and let alone the DP World Tour fans that have seen him play an unbelievable stretch of golf the last 5 to 10 games. The issue for Ryan Fox, I legitimately think he's going to be like 20% owned. I have him projected for less than that right now, if you check my spreadsheet, if you're on the Patreon, but given all this steam behind him, it would not surprise me if he's that piece of chalk come Thursday morning that nobody was expecting, because everyone's going to think it's the sneaky play, and I really don't think it's that sneaky. Obviously, $8,500, you have a lot of PGA Tour professionals around him that we see week in and week out. I mean, $300 more expensive Viktor Hovland, $200 more expensive Sungjae Im. You got to ask yourself, how much stock are we going to put into those DP World Tour starts? And the answer for me is quite a bit, but not as much as the PGA Tour, right? So while he's been an absolute stud overseas, I'm not sure I'm willing to give him credit for true, top 5 or top 10 finishes every single week. The equivalent on the PGA Tour is more like probably like a top 25 finish. And you're talking about players around here that have replicated that, if not played better, right? Obviously, Billy Horschel has a win. Somebody like Joaquin, Niemann, Sungjae Im has played pretty well. Obviously, Viktor Hovland in a little bit of a downstretch, but Jordan Spieth win multiple top 10 finishes. It's hard for me to get to Ryan Fox in bunches, which is going to take like 35 to 40% this week. When you have guys around him that I think have just as much upside, if not higher upside, and to think that you're playing Ryan Fox this week and you're going to be unique, I think is playing against yourself. It's just not going to be the case. I haven't projected for a lot higher ownership than people are expecting. So at that price tag is somebody I'm going to be avoiding in this market. But from the outright market, like I mentioned before, absolutely love him going forward. I think he has some upside here. The number on him I got was extremely inflated at the beginning of the week. It's gotten bet down, which is also another sign of why I think all this ownership is going to get here. And obviously in the outright perspective, I'm not worried about ownership. It's literally not part of my equation whatsoever, right? I'm just going out there and betting guys that I see value on. But in this DFS game, which is exactly that, it's a game, we have to go out there and play by the rules and try to take advantage. All right, and now on to the sleeper picks. So first off, we're going to have Jon Rahm at $11,000 exactly. And at that price tag and at the ownership numbers I have him at, I think he's being a little bit lower owned than he should be. Now, you're not looking at single digits, not even the low teens when it comes to his ownership. But this is somebody who I think should be the chalk of the chalk on the slate, potentially even 20% plus. And he's not even getting close to that number. In terms of the recent form, he's doing exactly what we're looking for, still mashing the ball off the tee, but more importantly, has turned the short game around. Around the green is a positive for him, and it had been a negative for quite some time. The putter has gone back to being a strength for him. The real X factor is if he gets that approach play back, where he was gaining 1.3 strokes per round on approach just a few months ago, I mean, book it. This guy is winning event after event. So for me, I thought he was going to be super chalky. I thought he was going to have to be a decision point for this video, potentially even a fade, because he was going to be 20 to 25% owned. But we're not worrying about that at this point. So I like him there at that price tag. Of course, last time he played here, finished in the top 10, 7th place finish. In terms of his recent form, has been pretty sharp too, right? Top 15 at the US Open, top 10 at the Memorial, had the win at the Mexico Open, just checking all the boxes we're looking for. And it's taken some time off. Hasn't played all that much golf, which might be good for Jon Rahm. He got out there for the JP McGannis Pro-Am, was able to play there on Monday and Tuesday on a Ryder Cup type venue, so that should have been good practice, or at least a good way to get amped up for the Scottish Open this week. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him go out there and potentially even win the week before the Open Championship. Next up, we've got Collin Morikawa, who last year, of course, complained about his irons at the Scottish Open, didn't play all that well, mentioned that he wasn't getting through the turf all that well, and infamously the next week went out and won the Open Championship. Now, he's always kind of played well overseas, was the DP World Tour winner last year for an American, which was pretty ridiculous, especially if you ask European Tour fans. But on top of that, he's got the type of play to take home this golf course. Accurate off the tee, which of course is great, especially when you have all that fescue grass out there. But on top of that, also a great iron player. player. And anytime you're going to have a winning score close to 20 under par, maybe a little bit higher this year, you're still going to have that iron play. And of late, Morikawa has putted the ball a lot better than we're used to seeing. So if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, still great off the tee and on approach, but most importantly is getting a lot closer to a neutral with the flat stick. And for Collin Morikawa, when he's close to a neutral, that's telling you that he's having those pop performances. And you've seen that in his recent form. He's been inconsistent, but is starting to turn it around. So obviously top 5 at the US Open, the missed cut at the Memorial was a example of some of the negative volatility, but even before that, a few other top 5 finishes have had. A few examples of those performances would include the Masters with a top 5, also the second place at the Genesis Invitational, and while they've been spread out, it's been when the putter has come around, and of late, we saw it the last time out, and more importantly, the ball striking stats, which were right around like half a stroke gained on approach before, are now closer to a stroke per round. He's still gaining significantly off the tee, pretty solid around the green. He's putting up the blueprint tee to green now when he has those performances rather than a second place, obviously 5th place or something like that. It's going to be a win this time around because the other stats are exactly what we expect from Collin Morikawa. So I like his upside here. I think he's a sleeping giant just waiting to go out there and break a slate at some point. We've seen that at least 3 to 4 times in his career already at this point, and it wouldn't surprise me to see it happen once again at the place where he, of course, was infamously complaining about those irons last year. Next up, we've got Joaquin Niemann, and he's the last player we'll talk about for this video. He's at $8,600. He's coming in extremely low owned. In fact, actually single-digit owned when it comes to my projections. And the main reason I like him here is he's got the ball striking stats we're looking for. And kind of like a Collin Morikawa, he's a popper with the putter. So if we take a look at the shots gained, you'll get a great idea of what I'm talking about. You can see gaining significantly both off the tee and on approach. We're used to seeing that from Joaquin. Now, might be a little bit more inconsistent with the irons, but has certainly played well of late. And the putter, it also has been a positive. And for him, it can be a little bit inconsistent. So the reason why the finishes have been so pretty solid of late is because of those approach and putting stats. Of course, the miscut of the Travelers wasn't ideal, but a 3rd place at the Memorial, a top 25 at the PGA Championship, a top 25 at the Byron Nelson. He's kind of just been getting it by. The issue is he has to marry all 4 stats together. At the Travelers, the putter wasn't there. He had a really hard time making putts. At the Memorial, he was pretty solid on approach and also off the tee, but his putter wasn't a ceiling performance, so that's why he only finished in 3rd. US Open, he was kind of scratchy across the board. He just needs to marry all 4 stats, where he gains across the board. You can see even around the green where it's just a marginal gainer, he's still a gainer in that category. So if he can go out there, hold it together around the green, right? We're not expecting him to gain a bunch of strokes there, but gain off the tee on approach like he's more than capable of doing, and then finds that spike putter. Again, this is asking a lot from Joaquin Niemann, but he does what he does at the Genesis this year. He wins walking away from golf tournaments. At the Greenbrier, when he won that golf tournament, just shows you the type of firepower that he has. And even when he isn't winning golf tournaments, right, he can go out there and do what he did at the Memorial, right, finish in the top 3, multiple other top 10 finishes on this season alone. So I like his upside here. Especially like Joaquin Niemann when he's low owned. He's usually chalky. Plenty of times he's gone off this year. He's been like 20-25% owned. And a lot of times I'm not on him, right? Because he's going to be super chalky. But with the recent form, I think he should be chalk, right? He's gaining across the board. He's gaining 2/3 of a stroke per round off the tee. That's going to be especially valuable around this golf course. And he's less owned than Ryan Fox, who's, again, I understand the play. I have an outright bet on him. But if you're telling me from a long-term perspective that we should be taking Ryan Fox over Joaquin Niemann, I'd just tell you that you're wrong, especially from the statistical perspective from what I've seen. So, anyways, that's all I've got for the fades and sleepers. Before you hop on out of here, make sure you smash that like button, but also make sure you go ahead and comment down below who you're fading this week and who your biggest sleeper pick is. I'd love to hear from you guys, and as per usual, going to do our DFS live stream tonight as well. It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure to stop on by with any questions that you have. We'll be touching on the weather, my player poll, any questions. Again, down in live chat, we can go over the betting board. We'll talk about the Barbasol a little bit too, so going to be a great time. Looking forward to it. I appreciate all the support here on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.